What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts Dylan and Davin. And last night, the Knicks had yet another frustrating loss, losing to the Atlanta Hawks by a score of 116 to 121. And I think a big reason why they lost down the stretch, ironically enough, was because of Jalen Brunson. The guy that we're used to being very clutch has not been very clutch this season, and it's really been kind of alarming. Yes, I know it's still early in the season, but we want to see this guy kind of take over late in games and lead us to wins, and so far the opposite effect has been happening. So we're going to sit here and talk about this stuff. So Davin, first off, tell me how you're doing, and secondly, what are some things you have noticed differently about Jalen Brunson down the stretch of games this season compared to last season?
Doing great, man. As always, thank you for asking. And quite honestly, he's got to put the cape on, man. He's got to put the bad man cape on. In the fourth quarter, he's only shooting 24% over the last two games, both in losses to the Houston Rockets, respectfully, and then the Atlanta Hawks. That loss yesterday was dreadful, very demoralizing, and really let us know that this guy, as far as the team as a whole, the chemistry is just not where it should be. I think he's the captain, so everything starts with Jalen Brunson. Everything starts from the top, and it's like if you're not taking the tone or coming out, firing on all cylinders, then team's going to fall behind. It just is what it is. And in the fourth quarter, when it's time to really lock down and execute, it's time to really be on your game. He has not been there, and I think that comes with a mix here. I think right now he's trying to. It's like growing pains right now with Jalen Brunson. He's really trying to formulate how to become the ultimate playmaker and then be the volume scorer that he is. Very hard to balance. So I can understand, some woes going on. 7 games in, you don't want to see that too well 7 games in, but at the same time, new team, he's the number one guy, and there's so much that the other guys are stretching thin right now. It makes it almost where it's like, I'm not saying impossible, but at the same time, it's a stretch for Brunson. It's growing pains. It's going to take some time. I'm not going to give it like a leeway to exactly what's going on right now because it's the fourth quarter and we need to be winning these games. And the games you're setting yourself back on right now, you're going to have to work even harder with a team that's stretched thin already. So this is not the formula for winning and for success as we've seen so far from Brunson. And I'm looking forward to what happens against the Milwaukee Bucks. But yeah, a lot of things to go with Jalen
Yeah,
Brunson.
and I think something that's worth noting is last night against Atlanta, he didn't seem willing to take any shots in the fourth quarter. In fact, he only made one shot, and it was just a window dressing three with 5 seconds left that really did nothing to change the outcome of the game. So, really, I think what we want to see is just him be kind of a little more aggressive and take some shots, but also, find the right guys at the same time. It's a mixed bag a little bit, but I do think that there's kind of a combination of I think he's trying too hard to be the hero, but at the same time, he's also not willing to take the shots you want him to take. Because he did pass up an open three down the stretch. He passed up some good looks. And of course, earlier in the game, he was turning the ball over quite a lot. So there's kind of an issue in both areas, right? But it's just odd for me to see because last year and the year before, we knew Brunson as the guy who was going to take over the games down the stretch, guy who was just going to hit bucket after bucket, keep the Knicks in games, and eventually climb them over the top and get the wins. Lately, though, this season it has been kind of the opposite. He's getting the ball in the fourth quarter, but he's either not taking the shots you want him to take, or he's just taking bad shots, simply put, and getting blocked or missing them by a good amount of feet. And that's what you don't want to see. You want to see him, like I said, just take over and really kind of elevate the Knicks a little bit. And it's just weird because like on paper his numbers don't seem that bad. He's averaging 25 points a game right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's shooting 46%
46%.
from the floor and from three. That's a very efficient clip. It is. I mean, on paper the numbers look great, but if you watch down the stretch of games, especially like fourth quarters and stuff like that, there's something kind of off with him a little bit. Obviously, it's still early in the season. And we can't just sit here and act like, that this is going to be a trend that's going to continue. Because, quite frankly, after the Pistons game, I thought that he was going to go on one of those stretches again where he's out on a heater. You can't stop this guy. He's scoring in every which way. But then he kind of took a step back a little bit. Against Houston, he had 29 points and 8 assists, sure, but it was a pretty inefficient 29 points. And then last night against Atlanta, of course, only 21 points, 4 assists, and 3 turnovers, which is alarming. I know he's not exactly a playmaker, but he is the main guy on this team. He's going to be the main point guard. And when you have that many mouths to feed on the court, all guys that can shoot, and when you have like Bridges and Towns now with you to kind of help carry the scoring load with you, it's not just all yourself. You don't want to see the ball get turned over. You don't want to see possessions being wasted, right? And I think another big thing to highlight too is the pace. The Knicks are playing at a very, very slow pace. In fact, the slowest pace in the league so far to start the year. Now, we're used to the Knicks playing at a slow pace. It is something that they have been doing pretty much the entire Tom Thibodeau era. It's just kind of Thibodeau's coaching style. It's kind of just the players that are on this team that they play slower. They play at a slower pace, and it's how they kind of operate. And it's led to success, and of course, it leads to some frustrating L's like last night. But we also don't want to see them just kind of take their time and wait too long to get into sets, because that's what Jalen Brunson was doing last night. He was taking way too long to really kind of get the offense set, and then by the time you really had it set, you had very little time on the shot clock, and you ended up getting these one-and-done possessions where you're getting one pass off and then the shot's going up right away. That's not what you want. And it's odd, too, because the Knicks did shoot pretty efficiently from the floor last night as a team. 48 from the floor and 46 from three. They've been a hyper-efficient team all season long. But at the same time, I feel like we're just missing something from Brunson a little bit. And I think he would be the first guy to tell you that too, because we all know he's like his own biggest critic. He's the type of guy that will, rip his own performance left and right. Even if he had an amazing game, he will still say that there's something better that he could have done about it. But so far, it seems like Towns has kind of been that guy that's taken over games late down the stretch and kind of been the one going off and stuff like that, which is great. That's why you have him here. He's another all-star, another superstar caliber player, all that stuff. So that's great. But we want to see Brunson do the same thing. Yeah, Brunson's had some good games. Yes, on paper his numbers are pretty good. And he had the Detroit game where he was very efficient, very great. He's had some good games already this season. But again, down the stretch of these games, back-to-back games now, where down the stretch he kind of disappeared a little bit, and it's alarming. It is. He also had that one game against Cleveland where he was shut down in the fourth quarter. And credit to some of these teams because they game plan this stuff and they play pretty good defense against him. Dyson Daniels was giving Brunson fits all night last night, so at some point you just got to tip your cap to the defense and say that they did good, they had a good game plan, they planned for it. But still, I just want to see Brunson do the right things and really just kind of take over games himself, but also make the right reads and the right decisions. Because when you're out there looking indecisive, like it seems like he is at times, that's when it leads to this, where it leads to dormant fourth quarters, dormant stretches, quiet last 5 minutes of games, and then you end up blowing a lead. I mean, they had a 5-point lead with 2.5 minutes left and the basketball. And quite frankly, they should have won the game last night. They should have. All you needed at that point was another bucket, and you really could have pulled away. Instead, they started taking bad shots, which was a problem that they were kind of having for most of the first half. Taking some bad shots, bad shot selection, not really moving the ball as great as you would have hoped for it to move, and that's how they ended up losing. You end up losing because you just go quiet down the stretch, and that's what you don't want. You want your superstar to take over, and that's what Brunson's here for. He's here to kind of take over and be that clutch guy, but so far he has not been Captain Clutch, and that's concerning. I want to get your input on that, though, because I know I said a lot there, so tell me about it.
Oh, no, you're good, man. No, I think really you're on the nail with it. So Jalen Brunson, I think right now, like I said, the slow pace right now. The Knicks are overthinking a lot. They're overthinking a lot. A lot is going into balancing egos, making sure shot distribution and things are on key. At the same time, Jalen Brunson, he's the leader. So you should be the one setting the tone for all of that. That's how the way I see it. In the fourth quarter, going cold and not taking shots at all, that's not even a question there. There's no time for you to not be taking shots. You are the number one guy. Carlton Towns is averaging 29 points, 14 rebounds over the last 4 games, 50% from the field, 46% from three. It's phenomenal. It really is from Carlton Towns. And you want to see that. Like you said, star acquisition was what we want to see from him. But at the same time, Jalen Brunson, you would think after this time being the great playmaker that he's trying to become, it wouldn't take this much time. That's all it is, in my opinion, growing pains. These guys are overthinking on offense, with really, you see how much that affects everything, how small overthinking can be, because these guys start overthinking on offense, all of a sudden poor transition defense, poor decision-making, just ridiculous turnovers. And that's the thing about Brunson as well, really untimely turnovers. Like, you'll see some things, the momentum shift in just a moment just because of something that Brunson may have made a wrong read on. And that's just what we're seeing here. We're seeing these guys really try to develop a chemistry with each other, and it's easier said than done for sure. And I think Jalen Brunson, these growing pains, he will phase out of this. At the same time, it is alarming to see what we're seeing right now. And he's definitely going to just be having to grow chemistry and become the great playmaker that we know he can be, because that's really just all it's about, in my opinion. I think that when it all borders down to it, you have him and Carlton Towns leading the way. Then you have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby kind of just, I would say, overexerting themselves right now. There's a lot to ask for the Knicks right now, in my opinion, man. That's, like I said, the Knicks are stretched thin. I find it very, very interesting the fact that they're at a negative record right now with the schedule they have the rest of the month here. I can't sit here and anticipate that the Knicks will be, they might be 500 going into December. You know what I'm saying? I mean, going into January is what I'm saying. It's going to be very interesting to see these next couple of months for the New York Knicks. And I really, it's kind of interesting. But setting the tone, being for Jalen Brunson is really what it's all about. And he's going to be better, man. I really can't say too much about Brunson as far as speaking ill on his game because he is, he's the guy. He's the captain of the ship here. At the same time, we're going to keep our eye on it, keep a tab on exactly how much he's going to be performing in these highlight games, especially the one upcoming this Friday.
Yeah, and Game 7 of 82 is obviously not the time to panic. It's far from it. I mean, history shows that the Knicks have always gotten off to these slow starts and then they kick it into high gear. I mean, literally in the last 2 seasons, they've gone 3-4 to start the year, and then they ended up winning 47 games in 2022 and then 50 games, last year. So, I'm not worried about their long-term outlook. I'm sure this team will be fine and they're going to, really kick it into high gear once they get their chemistry. But I do think it is concerning looking at the way this rotation is at the moment, and it's like you said, it's stretched thin. I mean, I'm looking at the stats right here, and every starter played at least 36 minutes last night, including OG Anunoby, who played 41 minutes. Now, that's kind of been the story all season long. I understand yesterday was a close game, so your starters are going to play the bulk of the minutes, but, again, we're in Game 7 of 82. Why are we, playing our guys 40 minutes already? I understand you're missing Achua, you are missing Robinson, you've been missing Cameron Payne for the last 2 games. I understand that the rotation's thin, but some other guys need to play. Some other guys need to play and get these guys a rest, because I do think I do think a little bit of the reason why Brunson has been struggling the way he has, there's some fatigue to it. There is, defenses play him the hardest out of anybody else on the floor, so that's going to, create some wear and tear on a player. And especially as, how thin the rotation has been all season, you jumped right out of the gate pretty much playing essentially an 8 or 9 man rotation right away. That's going to get some wear and tear on players. It is. I'm not, I've been someone who is not a believer in that whole Tom Thibodeau runs his players into the ground myth, but I do think at this start of the year, you need to play some other guys a little bit, give them some extra minutes, because, we saw Tyler Kolek out there for 8 minutes yesterday, and he looked good in those 8 minutes. He did. He had knocked down 2 threes. The offense was moving. The ball was moving pretty well. In fact, he was a +2 last night in those 8 minutes. But, again, why not play him a little bit more? Why not get Dottier a look? Why not get Huckporty a look? I do think you got to play some of these guys more because, quite frankly, the minutes distribution that we are seeing right now is not sustainable. It's not. You cannot expect to play, 7 guys or 6 guys, whatever, for 30+ minutes and then play 2 other guys for less than 10 minutes. You can't do that. You just can't do it. It's not sustainable. These guys are going to get tired. They're going to end up struggling. That's what we were seeing last night. We really were. I mean, I truly think Brunson's getting tired a little bit out here. It was a long road trip, to say the least, right there. That's without mentioning that. It was a long road trip. Now you're heading back home for just 1 game before you go right back on the road. It's a tough schedule to start the year as it is. You're playing tough opponents. You're playing on the road more often than not. And you're playing with a thin rotation. And, of course, with Brunson, like I said, they're playing him the hardest out of anybody else. So, therefore, it's gonna create some wear and tear. I think, though, the last point I kind of want to segue into, and it kind of mentions a little bit what you just talked about, the chemistry. It's very clear they're still developing that chemistry. It looked like for, a brief, it looked like in that Pistons game, and as well as, the Pacers game and stuff like that, it looked like they had chemistry pretty well. It looked like, it looks like one game they have, some struggling chemistry, looks like they're still trying to figure things out, and then the next game it looks like they have it all perfect, and then it looked great on both ends of the floor. But the last 2 games, they've taken a step back, both offensively and defensively. And that's been what's critical for them down the stretch of games. I just want to see better output from these guys on both ends. But it starts with chemistry. It does. They still need to develop chemistry. It's still very early in the season. We're only 7 games in. Game 8 tomorrow night against Milwaukee. So it's going to take time for the chemistry to come. It's a brand new starting 5. I get that. And I understand, too, that you want to play these guys more often because you have even with the thin rotations you have, you want to get your best 5 out there as much as you can so that they can develop that chemistry and also develop the type of chemistry you need to have down the stretch of close games like last night. So I understand that. There are both sides to this. But at the same time, I do think you need to kind of expand the rotation a little bit, give some other guys a look that deserve a look. And I do think at the same time, you want to get these guys to develop chemistry as much as possible. It's a tough situation. I acknowledge that. It is a very tough situation for Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks entirely, and of course Tom Thibodeau. It's a very tough situation to navigate to start the year, missing so many key pieces. The rebounding has been quite frankly, a major weakness this season because you are missing Achua and Robinson, two guys that provide you size and rebounding and a presence on the glass. They're missing them badly right now, you know? So you got to have these other guys kind of step up. You're lacking some size a little bit, and it's hurting the Knicks. It is. But at this point, it's going to be tough sledding down the stretch. I think you just need to kind of stay afloat in that Eastern Conference, get a little healthy a little bit, and then at some point this team will take off because at some point they will get chemistry. At some point Jalen Brunson will snap out of this little funk that he's in because he's not. At the end of the day, players are going to go through slumps. I'd rather a player go through a slump in the very beginning of the season than at the very end of the season. But still, I just want to see better production from Brunson down the stretch of games. I don't want to see him be as hesitant, but at the same time, I also want to see him making the right reads and getting others involved. It's a combination of two things, really. It is. There's no one thing specifically that I can point at and say, yeah, that's why Jalen Brunson is struggling. No, there's a few reasons why, and it's all the reasons I just laid out. I want to give you an opportunity though to add anything else you want to add before we wrap this up.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, no. Honestly, the last thing I have to speak on really is the defense. Jalen Brunson defensively, he's not a cone out there, but at the same time, he's not the biggest guy out there. I think setting the tone for him for a guy of his size, it's very important. We have a lot of Steph Curry over there in Golden State. He's very much about that. 6'2", he's not too big at all, but a big enough frame to be able to be a contest out there. Get 3 steals if he had. So I think he had 3 or 4 steals last night. Things of that nature, Jalen Brunson, these are traits to be adapted. At the same time, it really sets the tone for the team because things like that, like I say, he's not a weak defender. But I do want to point out the fact how important it is to set the tone. And when you have other guys kind of following behind you being the captain, it's kind of what everything's going to coincide. It's going to be the great Knicks team that we want to see. But right now, at the moment, it's just like these guys are like I said, overthinking matching that lack of defense is killing the Knicks right now. I believe they're bottom 5 in opponents' field goal percentage. I believe they're middle of pack in opponents' points per game. These guys are really not locked in defensively, which is kind of killing them on offense because this is a Tom Thibodeau-led team. We're going to get easy points in transition. We're not doing that. We're going to be getting open looks. It's not happening too well because teams are defending us well because you're overthinking getting to your spots and you're not really isolating yourself like you really know how to get to your spots. So it's just so much that all mixes together to have what we see right now is a mess of the New York Knicks the first 7 games here. I believe Jalen Brunson is going to be just fine, but I think small things, doing the little things, the games within the games, winning those battles, really going to help the New York Knicks here instead of kind of trying to overthink how to get all of these basketball minds and all these guys or shots and everything like that. Just play the game, man. Just play the game. Let it all flow through you. Let it flow to you, and then when it's closing time, you know who to get the ball to. You get the ball to Cat, you get the ball to Brunson, and get out of the way. Let these guys go to work and get your shots where they come. Just trying to please everyone on the offensive end is just not going to work. I've seen in the Pacers game, these guys have their own separate quarters. Ananobi's going to go get 8 in this quarter. Mikhail's going to get 12 in this quarter. Something like that. Just figuring it all out. You know what I mean? Figuring it all out. And then when it comes down to closing time, because the Hawks went a 13-1 run to close the game yesterday. Until 2 minutes left. But at 2-minute point, we were just fighting for our lives at that point. So it was shutting down, locking in, and poor execution on the offensive end is what led to that 13-1 run. All of a sudden, they're getting transition, put back, they're getting dunks and alley-oops and everything. It was insane. So, yeah, that's just what I think. Setting the tone is really, really important here. And Jalen Brunson, he's the guy for that. So I'm not going to say, it's a championship caliber team. I'm going to hold you to that level of player. And that's the things that's going to have to happen for us to really start winning games.
And the defense thing is a good point because, playing good defense leads to good offense. That's kind of just how basketball works nowadays. And especially with teams that play with a quick pace, even though the Knicks do not play with a quick pace, I do think that, if you play good defense, you can play faster and get much better looks instead of forcing up threes or forcing up contested mid-ranges. But I think all I really want to say is just I'm not saying that Brunson has to take every single shot down the stretch because I think that's the last thing Knicks Twitter wants to see at the moment because a lot of them have been kind of going off on him about that. But I do think that at the same time, we just need to see him make the right decisions that we're used to him seeing. I don't think we're really seeing the version of Brunson that we saw last year where he was looking confident out there and taking every shot down the stretch of games. I understand that last year the circumstances were slightly different because he had to kind of, take over down stretches always because just there was so little bodies out there. But at the same time, just all I want to see is just him making the right decisions. I think that's really what it comes down to, decision making. I think there's kind of it comes with the chemistry thing as well. There's kind of just a disconnect a little bit. They're unsure of who's supposed to be getting the ball here, and the silver it's like a slight silver lining, but at the same time it kind of highlights the issue. All five starters have been scoring in double figures for 5 or 6 straight games now, which it's good that you're seeing the other guys get involved, but at the same time I think they're kind of focusing too much on getting everyone touches as opposed to making sure your stars are getting the most looks and making sure that like Towns and Brunson are the ones that are getting the shots late in games. They're the ones that are taking over. Because, I mean, we've seen Towns do it already a couple times. He took over that Miami game, and that's how we won against Miami. He nearly played the hero last night against Atlanta. He's had some very good games already. And that's what you want to see. That's why we have him here. But at the same time, I don't think we're seeing the same thing from Brunson, which growing pains were to be expected. It's a brand new team for Brunson, and considering that he is the guy and he's the main operator of this offense, yeah, he's got to make an adjustment. So I understand that he's kind of still trying to adjust to that right now. I acknowledge that. I'm not worried about Brunson necessarily. I do think at the end of the day, we're going to get the version that we got of him last year sooner rather than later, and we're going to be seeing him really start to take over games again and really kind of just carry the Knicks to where they want to be. I do think we're going to see that at some point. But so far through these first 7 games, it's kind of been the opposite, and it is concerning a little bit because I do worry about the depth that we have. How tired is he going to be if we keep playing essentially 7 guys at this point? Because can we even call this an 8-man rotation if you're playing Kolek and Sims 8 and 9 minutes? Can you really call that an 8-man rotation at that point? It's like a 7-man rotation or a 6-man rotation even at that. So can you really? We can't even consider that. So when you look at it that way, you got to consider maybe Brunson will get tired or something like that. You got to kind of get these other guys in here to give him some rest. But you also just want to see Brunson make the right decisions and not get too not second guess himself, because like you said, they're overthinking big time. They clearly are. They were passing up a lot of shots yesterday, moving the ball a little too much last night. It's what led to the turnovers. The costly turnovers. Even though the turnover figure overall wasn't like substantially high, it was the timeliness of them. They were costly turnovers at really bad times, and that's what killed them. That's really all I got to say about it, though. I mean, I just want to see Brunson turn it around, and I do think he will at some point. But I do think this is a good place to wrap up the episode. So, guys, we really hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know what you got to say about Jalen Brunson and his recent struggles in the comment section below, because we would love to hear about it. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, of course, this YouTube page that you are watching the video on. You can follow our personal Twitter accounts. They're above our heads. And we will see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.